and also for these participants for support in organizing the conference. So now we can switch the slides and head over to the next point on our agenda. One of the players in fighting the corruption is law enforcement institutions and non-governmental sector. Once again, what I wrote in the agenda is that this fight is not efficient enough. There are loud criminal proceedings, but they do not end with penalties, because we know that it is important to receive the penalty for it, because, well, again, this may be a factor showing that there's this fight. And what in 10 years? I mean, next discussion then, how to strengthen the chain of criminal proceedings in the fight against the corruption. This is Dean of Faculty of Justice in the University of Latvia, then is going to help us understand that. In any event, there should be technical. It's okay. Yes, microphone is on. Always yes. Thank you to technical department who has already started the microphone. Now, first discussion and participants of this discussion for us to begin. State Secretary Mihails Papsujevičs of the Ministry of Justice of Latvia. Prosecutor General Mr. Stukāns. Corruption Prevention and Combating Bureau, Ineta Cīrule, Deputy Chair. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to host this discussion. We're going to be talking about a chain. A chain was like a keyword there, fighting this chain about these criminal proceedings. The chain of criminal proceedings, as we know, the chain is as strong as its weakest element. So there are two things for all these elements to even be connected, interconnected, and only then we can discuss for the chain to be strong enough. And previously, when we did announce this topic, we were asked to conduct this discussion with some insight into the past, or reflection on the past. We have to learn from the past, definitely, for us to securely look into the future and where we are now, what we do see, what will be the challenges in the future, and what we can, from today's perspective, know what are we going to do. Again, we'll say Rīdzenes talks and this, what happened in this hotel, and this is a symbolic place. And let us speak about what it was. Was it a bust? I don't think we can say that it was a success for us. And with Madame Cīrule, we actually discussed already before that it seems like it has been just a tale of reality, a story, what happened, and it reflects what happened during the last 10 years. And so the first question to our discussion panelists is several aspects. First of all, what is this like a brightest memory of the last 10 years in the field of corruption? What happened? Like, can you stress maybe something that was successful? Maybe you can say what has been a large challenge we have overcome in this criminal proceedings system, from investigation to also trial. So, Mr. Papsujevičs, then maybe begin. Yes, the mic is working. And then going through the park, and here there was Radio of Latvia also in Christmas markets. And unfortunately, the corruption perception index during the last 6 months, years has changed only several percentage points. And now what comes in our mind personally then, and also to as a representative of the population and as a specialist, I believe that the improvements have been in very minor corruptive cases. And so these minor changes were, for example, with the road traffic police taking bribes on the streets. And we do see that by technical means with electronic devices where you cannot, I mean, there have been attempts, but still this changed the situation. And now, well, and actually people were also countering or fighting with these technical means. I mean, this is the first thing that comes to our mind, but these big fish or the large corruptive events, well, still Latvia is receiving the criticism for that. So, and then there were changes with the war in Ukraine, of course, waged by Russia. And here everyone and professionals too believe and understand and now understand how big and how detrimental it is if in state structures and in justice system of the state, this corruption is so much integrated everywhere. And it is like the title, once again, of this conference is this is the threat to our national and global security. That is the first thing that comes to my mind talking about it. Mr. Stukāns, maybe you can then continue. Is it a bigger, has this threat become bigger? Maybe any busts or success stories? I think it's actually less of a threat today than previously because economically we have grown. And I will not even tell you now where we were 10 years ago. I think I was a judge. And I remember my salary was very small. Then I went away, then I returned to this occupation. But now prosecutors and judges shouldn't be crying, so to say, because, and if anyone believes they might be corrupted, then they have to leave. There's no other option. And if something or anything has changed during the last 10 years, then what has changed is that KNAP has gained more experience and also in the world.
Tehnoloģijas, kuras nodrošina varbūt lielākas iespējas.
Everything develops and there are new technologies and we can then establish that, but
un nauda. Un līdz ar to visu mūžu bija.
Corruption is always a human being and money, and so it's been like that always. And this money has always been significant, and this is us people making these decisions. If we're talking about road traffic police, is it actually a big problem if they are not being paid and say, well, you actually have to survive and you will earn on the streets, and this is what they did. But now, if we talk about the service in internal service as such or state service, if the country, the state, is not paying the remuneration that corresponds to this field and to the realities in the country, then there is a corruption risk. And we need to think about these aspects. We need to think about aspects of the security. And so for the security not to be even possible, the public officials need to think in this direction. And here we have opportunities to evaluate and also to involve in large projects, in large processes where there's a lot of money, a lot of and so in Latvia is not that big, and we know who are the decision makers in Latvia, and so the services need to find a way how the respective information to obtain this information and strengthen it with the evidence and use it, and what to do with it. So corruption, in fighting corruption field, it will be always important to understand nationally that we need appropriate resource, human resource, financial resource for services or respective service to be able to fulfill their services, their duties. And we need to know that we have strong service. And I hope then public state officials are going to think twice before doing something. To do it, once again, we need to investigate and prove and just be committed to our work. And so, thank you. This was exactly the idea, being like, what is the first to do when something is, when we reveal something? And then, as I said, this chain is as strong as its weakest element. Then, how do we begin? The first element of the chain, what is it? The question then to Madame Cīrule, and in investigation, looking also back and up to today, because we will also speak about the future perspectives, but what has been the most difficult so far that has promoted this fight, this combat? If we look back, then I have to say that previously people did not report such crimes so much. Now we have we have regulations in place to defend, to protect the whistleblowers. And previously it was comparatively or even actually easier to investigate the corruption cases because everything was solved by means of money in ways like being present and actually transferring the money. But today, most corruption takes place in virtual environment. And this is what we can talk about in the next part of the discussion, because this virtual environment is definitely going to be a challenge for investigation. And yes, so investigation has become more difficult, and corruption has no borders anymore. It is everywhere, ever present in all the world. And so the speakers also did note this and then said about this future vision, what actually we can anticipate in the future. But 2 points, I mean, state not caring enough for state public officials or specific state public officials, which otherwise would be, and in this case is actually an incentive to involve in corruptive activities. But another conditions, among them being this digital environment, it will be challenged in the future. But at the same time, do we see like the solution? I mean, with salaries, we can all say that we see the solutions, but will the politicians actually believe the same, that the policemen and the investigators need to receive decent remuneration? So here also in the introduction speech, we heard that this community, and society, how they perceive. We're talking about long procedures, trials, but actually, is it true? And are the penalties just too mild because community once again wants to see maybe more? And what about the penalties as such? Are they not, well, and proceedings too long? Maybe sometimes there's not even a result without some objective reason being, and virtual environment, how is that going to impact us in the future? So maybe in the same order, you can say.
Nepopulārs tajā, ko es parasti saku, bet attiecībā uz sodu.
Considering punishments, maybe I will not be popular by saying this, but what concerns severity, I would rank it at number 2. Because what is the most important is that someone is caught. If a person who commits any crime, including corruptive crimes, if this person is convinced that he will never be caught, then this is a very, very significant problem. This is not a future challenge. This is a today's challenge. And this is something that investigative bodies see, for example, in the virtual environment. It will be very difficult for us to continue in this regard, and so it's good that we cooperate with international partners, and this is a huge challenge. We, of course, cooperate what concerns investigation and also evidence. The punishments should be commensurate, proportional. If someone is caught and investigated and prosecuted, and then this person would balance the severity with the crime. But if someone is convinced that I will never be caught, then it's meaningless to speak about the severity. I would also like to underline another aspect. You mentioned that it is very important how the links of the chain are connected. In my mind, it's very important to invest in education of all 3 links and how we assess specific evidence, which evidence is admissible and which is not admissible, which is supporting the prosecution and which is not. And we have quite good examples what concerns direct evidence, and also in cases of money laundering, we have come together and we have discussed specific cases and we have arrived from an understanding. So this is one issue that we need to focus on also in the future. We should strengthen it in all three links of the chain. And when this bridge is built for all these sections to be connected, I believe that the ministry, together with cooperation partners, prosecutor's office and the Supreme Court, they are currently creating a judicial academy that will be a good investment in the future that will allow to achieve this. I would like to begin by saying that corruption prevention and fight against the corruption office, I think that we need to prevent rather than fight, so that people even didn't get this idea that they could do something. Prevention would be much more economical than investigating these crimes later. What concerns corruption, both parties are interested. Thus, this is one of the most complicated crimes, because the respective services, respective agencies, also considering the human rights principles, should be able to investigate this and to establish and document the evidence. But what concerns corruption cases, we have to ask ourselves why there is corruption? Because someone wants to enjoy the nice life. And if the money is not used, then corruption is meaningless. We should look also at what has been discussed before. I don't know if it's going to continue, but we, let's say, have border. There are border guards, there are customs officials. Everyone sees how they live, what is their lifestyle, but they continue to work, continue to live in the same way. But the state continues to ignore that. The salaries are small, but they build huge houses. So we have contacted the respective services, have started doing something. We have charged more than 30 customs officials. So there are positive trends. But the proceedings are quite lengthy. Yesterday, I had a sort of a present for Christmas. For 20 years, the state has not been able to complete a criminal case related to signing one agreement. So what are we talking about? When this case started, I was a judge of the first instance. I, of course, cannot reveal details, but when this is finalized, I think the professor should look at this case and at least theoretically try to establish what has happened, why we were not able. Of course, at that time it was more complicated, but it's not rocket science. We still are unable. If we speak about investigation or pre-trial phase, all corruption cases, and there is another case where I was involved, the president of the Latvian Railways. His salary, I think, was the highest of all Latvian officials, still taking bribes. I didn't mention the surname, so we assume that took bribes because the sentence is not final yet. During the first instance, he was exonerated because they were completely lost in the facts of the case. But there, the amounts are totally different. It's millions, and it has been recorded and documented. But still, the state is not able to ensure a reasonable time. I don't know what is going there. The pre-trial phase was not really long, but in the court, it's totally different. We have to think about that because the public wants to see the result. And a result
Šobrīd,
that
diemžēl,
is
visi
quick is also a factor that dissuades someone. And not even speaking about this digital case that we had, because some of the involved parties have already passed away. Yes, as if we have all the elements, but I think this human maybe element prevents us from achieving good results eventually. Thank you. We will use this wide interpretation of corruptive of the definition of what is corruption. So in these cases, as you said, both parties, they are interested, but the public suffers. So as the victim, the public wants to see just case, just result. And these cases, they are too long, nothing happens, or the severity of the punishment is not severe enough, or maybe there are some other opinions. Ms. Cīrule, in investigation phase, do you believe that this phase actually contributes to the problems like lengths or maybe cases that have not been solved? I will reiterate, but I think that the public, from all of us, expect that if there are suspicions voiced about illegal activities of one or the other person, they want quick results, quick investigation, quick finalization of the case. And we see that the cases are dragged for years. And what concerns investigation, small corruption cases can be investigated quickly in cooperation with prosecutor's office, are forwarded to the prosecutor's office and then to the court. I don't think there are any problems there. But what concerns these huge cases with many judicial assistance requests to other countries, even further than the Baltic states. Yes, in the Baltic states, cooperation is great, but considering the geopolitical situation, judicial assistance requests are very rarely answered from the countries that used to be in the Soviet Union. So this will be a future challenge, how to establish this network and how to have these acquaintances or these good contacts, and this could be a solution. Maybe to complete our discussion, I'll be slightly provocative. So if we speak with prosecutors, judges, and investigators, and also with the lawyers, solicitors, and barristers, and if we ask them, like, what has changed during the last 10 years? Is it better or is it worse? And there was a long answer that I received, but if I summarize it, then we could conclude that the willingness now matches the ability, because of late the ability has improved. And then there was also a mentioning of the purpose and means, because the aim, the purpose has always been noble, but now the means have also improved. Do you think that it is well warranted when someone says that, yes, the goal was noble, but the means maybe didn't really ensure this rule of the law, and that's why we have these long cases? Of course, the parties could act in bad faith, but or you think that it has never been like it was described? I think to some extent the question already provides an answer. If we look at the last 10 to 20 years, yes, the law has been improved. We also try to apply international recommendations and legal acts more diligently. We also build our case and we also work with various international partners and various agencies. We bring them here to share experience. And I think together all of that gives the desired result, but maybe not as quickly as we would wish. And this is something that we definitely need to continue. For example, we already spoke about digital challenges. We will not be able to do that alone. This week on Monday, on the Judicial Council, EU Judicial Council, there was discussion about legal matters, including corruption matters and also third countries. So how can we receive evidence from these countries? This is a huge challenge that we will not be able to solve alone. We have to work at various levels and we have to continue assessing our practice and our law and improve as needed. We have to skillfully apply during all stages of the proceedings, and we also have to work at international level with our partners, not to lag behind and to continue fighting new challenges. Maybe at the end, I would like to mention one word: openness. We have to invest efforts to make sure that officials act openly, and then we will be able to understand what is going on. Second, do everything possible to prevent to prevent money laundering. If this ability or if this possibility is prevented, is not allowed, then there won't be any motivation to take bribes. So we all together need to find new ways, new means to considering the current situation, technological, economical aspects, a lack of borders, to make sure that corrupt persons cannot really enjoy their life. From my side, at the end, I would like to say that we have to educate our youth. We have to invest in the youth because they are our future. Because if a person is not ready to give the bribe, if they know that they may be prosecuted for that, then the investigator and prosecutor's office will have less work in the future. And I think we will have always something to do what concerns criminality, but of course we would like to reduce the scope of work. And the youth is the stage where we have to invest, so that in 10 years, when we'll meet again, we could say that we have been successful in our fight against corruption. Thank you to the panelists. We still have a few minutes. At the beginning, dogs were mentioned. The dogs are barking or guarding, and we know the saying that the dogs keep barking, but the caravan proceeds. So maybe one last comment. From whom would you expect the greatest support? Of course, we can say that we are dogs, but in the good sense of this word. How can we ensure that the caravan would not proceed and that we would perceive this dog not only as someone who barks, but also someone who guards? So, do we have to work with politicians or laws or grant more financing or the public? What could be this key assistant in your work? Very simple answer. Everyone personally. Was Ms. Cīrule mentioned what concerns the youth, speaking with the youth and forming our attitudes. If I don't take bribes and if I don't need that, people would not come. Now, of course, they can come and offer, but I know what to do. If we have the zero tolerance against corruption, And if we have zero tolerance to this approach in general, if that is a principle that guides someone, then we are supported and we have solved the problem. Of course, it sounds utopian, but this is something where we need to invest. Thank you. I would like to invite NAB and other bodies to think about closer cooperation with businesses, because they have this money that is used for these crimes, and if businesses don't give, then there will be nothing to take. And I definitely agree that education and awareness raising is something that could be considered a keyword. If someone just totally dismisses the idea that he or she could give a bribe or take or use other legal means, then this problem would be solved. Like they need to call, they need to inform, and we also have to focus on critical or risky matters that could contribute to criminality. Of course, we speak at homes and so on, but the public actually is very dissatisfied that these corrupt officials are not just imprisoned for many years. And the final comment, speaking about investigation as the first stage, undeniably, the prosecutor's office will be the greatest support to investigators to ensure that specific cases are moved forward and that we ensure quick and efficient progress of the case. But in general, the fight against corruption depends on each of us. Thank you. Our time is up. Thank you to the panelists. I think we laid the foundations for the next panel discussion on the